Hey ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Unit 9, Notes 5-1. So today we're going to be talking about dividing rational expressions, which really isn't that different from multiplying rational expressions. The biggest thing you need to know when you're going through and doing this is that when you're dividing rational expressions, and that it's the same as dividing fractions. So when you're dividing by a fraction, you need to multiply by the reciprocal. So that just means you're going to flip the second expression and then you're going to multiply across. So let's take a look at what that's kind of going to look like. So let's take a look at number 1. So for number 1, what you're going to do is you want to flip this guy. So we have 5x squared y. That's going to stay the same. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to flip this second fraction, and I am going to go like this so that I just completely flipped it over on its head. Okay, so now I want to do some multiplying. So first thing I want to do is do 5 times 21, and that's going to give me 105. X squared, and then I have over 10x cubed y. So now I want to go about simplifying this just like I did on the previous note sheets. So first thing I want to do is reduce this fraction. So they are both divisible by 5. 105 divided by 5 is 21. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Now here I notice I have x squared divided by x to the third. So I need to subtract those exponents, and wherever the bigger amount of exponents is, that's x to the third, we need that x on the bottom as well as the y. Okay? Also, we want to make sure we state our excluded values. So let's take a look. On the bottom, originally we had 10x cubed. Y is equal to 0. So now we want to take each of those and set them equal to 0. So then we get that x is equal to 0 and y is equal to 0. So for our excluded values, we get that x cannot be 0 and y cannot be 0. Okay? Then we have 15y squared on top divided by 4x. Then we want to flip that fraction. 8x cubed divided by 5y. So I want to simplify this out. So first thing I'm going to do is take 15 times 8, and that's going to give me 120. X cubed y squared divided by 20xy. So then we want to go through and simplify this fraction. So 120 divided by 20 is actually a whole number. It's 6. If you wanted to write it as a fraction, you could write it as 6 over 1, but I'm just going to write it as 6 for right now. Now I want to reduce x cubed over x to the first. Subtract those exponents and you get x squared. Then we have y squared over y to the first, and we're left with y. So that's our final answer. Let's quickly calculate our excluded value. So we need to take that guy and set it equal to 0. So 20xy is equal to 0. So I'm going to set each part equal to 0. Well, this is never going to happen. So these two are going to be my excluded values. So my excluded values are that x cannot be 0 and y cannot be 0. Moving forward. Remember, all we're doing is just flipping those fractions. So let me point something out to you. I notice that I have this fraction 28 over 7. And I think to myself, hey, I can actually reduce that fraction. So you divide 28 divided by 7, and you're left with 4x squared y to the fifth. So all I did was reduce this fraction to start off with. That's going to make it simplifying later easier. So 21 divided by 35, well, both of those are divisible by, both those are divisible by 7, so let's keep that as divide. So then we get 3x to the 8th over 5y to the third. But now because it's dividing, we want to flip that fraction. So when we switch to multiplying, we want to flip the fraction. So let's go ahead and multiply. So we have 4 times 5 is 20, x squared, y to the third, and then we have 3x to the 8th, y to the 5th. Okay, so this 20 thirds can't be reduced anymore. Next, we have x squared over x to the 8th. So I'm going to keep 20 thirds the same. Now, 2 minus 8, well, that's going to give us negative 6. We want to put y to the 6th on the bottom because that's where our original most amount of x's were. Y to the third divided by y to the 5th. Oops, that should be an x. So this should be an x to the 6th, and this should be a y squared. So that's your final answer. Let's take this guy and set it equal to 0 to get our excluded value. 3x to the 8th, y to the 5th is equal to 0. So then we have 3 is equal to 0, x to the 8th is equal to 0, and y to the 5th is equal to 0. Okay, so that's not going to happen. The only way x to the 8th is ever going to equal to 0 is if x is equal to 0. The only way y to the 5th is ever going to be equal to 0 is if y is equal to 0. So then our excluded values are that x cannot be 0 and y cannot be 0. All right, let's take a look at number 4. So again, I see this 24 divided by 4. So I know I can reduce that fraction. I can divide both of them by 4 and I get 6. And then I'm going to keep this as x to the 6 over x to the 7. I'm also going to reduce this. 16 divided by 8 is going to give me 2. Now, you could wait to reduce it, but if you wait, then when you multiply, you're going to have bigger numbers, and that's not fun. So now what we want to do is flip that second fraction. So we have 6x to the 6th over x to the 7th times, now I'm going to put x squared up top and divide it by 2x cubed. So now we need to do some simplifying. So I'm going to multiply 6x to the 6th times x squared. When I do that, I need to add those exponents. And that gives me 6x to the 8th. Then on the bottom, we have 2x, and then you need to add those exponents, and you get to the 10th. 6 divided by 2 is going to give us 3. Now we need to simplify this guy down. X to the 8th divided by x to the 10th. Subtract those exponents, and you need to have x squared. And it's going to go on the bottom because the bigger amount of exponents is on the bottom. Last but not least, we want to calculate our excluded values. So remember, I calculate that after I multiply. So I'm going to take 2x to the 10th and set it equal to 0. So 2 is equal to 0, which isn't going to happen, or x to the 10th is equal to 0. So the only way x to the 10th could be equal to 0 is if x is equal to 0. So our excluded value is that x cannot be equal to 0. Okay, so now let's go ahead and simplify this out some more. So next, we have 27c cubed, d squared, and 11d. There's nothing I can do about those two numbers. Neither I can do with these two either, so I'm going to go ahead and flip it. I'm going to bring 9 to the top, d cubed e. Remember, when you're dividing, you flip only the second fraction. You flip only the second fraction. And now we want to go through and do some simplifying. So I'm going to multiply 27 times 9, and that gives me 243. And then I have c cubed, d cubed, e. So none of those letters can be combined because they're not the same letter. And then 11 times 2 is 22. And then we have dc cubed. Okay, so these two numbers aren't going to simplify anymore. Okay, so that fraction is going to have to stay in our simplified version. So then we're going to simplify the letters. Well, here I have c cubed over c cubed. That's going to cancel out. 243 over 22, we're going to keep that. Now our c's have canceled out because we had c cubed over c cubed. Here we have d cubed divided by d. Remember, this is the same as d to the first. So if you have d cubed divided by d to the first, that's just going to leave you with d squared on top when you subtract those exponents. Now this e doesn't have any pair on the bottom, so it's just going to be e on top. And so this right here is your final answer. Before we finish, let's get those excluded values. So 22d c cubed is equal to 0. So then we want to set each of these equal to 0. Well, 22 is never going to equal 0. So we know that d can't equal 0, and the only way c cubed is going to be equal to 0 is if c is equal to 0. So our excluded values are that d cannot be 0 and c cannot be 0. Next, let's take a look at number 6. So for number 6, I can reduce the fraction 36 over 6. It's actually going to reduce to 6. And then I'm going to have c squared d cubed over c cubed. So again, I'm just trying to make those numbers smaller. Then I can reduce 48 divided by 12. So I'm still keeping it as dividing, and that's going to be 4. And then we have d squared d cubed right here. So let's go ahead and simplify this out. Let's change this into a multiplication problem instead of a division problem. So this fraction right here is going to stay the same. This division sign means we need to multiply. So I'm going to, or sorry, I need to flip it to multiply. So then d cubed is going to come up top, and 4d squared is going to come to the bottom. So let's go ahead and multiply that out. So first we have 6. That's going to stay the same. So we have 6c squared, and then we have d cubed times d cubed, which is d to the 6th. On the bottom, 4c squared, d squared. So now we want to go through and simplify this out. So 6 over 4, divide both of those by 2, and you get 3 halves. C squared over c squared is just 1. D to the 6th divided by d squared, subtract those exponents, and you get d to the 4th. So this right here is your final answer. Now let's take a look at the excluded values. So we have 4c squared d squared is equal to 0. So now we want to take each of those parts and set them equal to 0. So when we do that, we get that our excluded value, this is never going to happen. So the only way that's going to happen is if c is equal to 0 or d is equal to 0. So that's your other final answer. Remember, for all of these, you want to state an excluded value and you want to give me a simplified fraction. Let's take a look at number 7. So for this one, it's going to be really similar to what we have been doing. So you're going to keep the bottom, or the first fraction you're going to keep the same. And then we want to flip that second fraction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply all across the top and multiply all across the bottom. So all I'm doing is writing all of those factors together, and then I'm going to cross off any factors that are overlapping. X plus 3, x minus 2, and x minus 4. Well, looky there. All of my factors canceled out, so that's just going to equal 1. So now I need to take, to get my excluded values, all of my original factors and set them equal to 0. So then I get x is equal to 4, x is equal to 2, and x is equal to negative 3. So my excluded values are that x cannot be 4, 2, or negative 3. Okay, let's take a look at number 8. So for number 8, first thing we want to do is x minus 2, x plus 6, and then x minus 3, x plus 9, and then I want to flip that second fraction so that x plus 9 is on top and that x minus 2 is on the bottom. So then if you write all of those factors multiplied out as one fraction, like so, divide, and then we're going to cancel out what's overlapping. Okay, remember, we have to have the same exact sign. So the only thing that cancels are the x plus 9. Let me erase this to give us a little bit more space. So then our x plus 9 is x minus 2 and x plus 6 on top. And on the bottom, x minus 3, x plus 2. So last but not least, we need to set each of those equal to 0. So we have x minus 3, x plus 9, and x plus 2 is equal to 0. So we're going to take each of those factors and set them equal to 0. Okay, so then we get that x cannot be 3, negative 9, or negative 2 for our excluded values. Okay, so let's take a look at these last ones. I'm going to get them set up for you, and then I want you to finish them. Okay, so I'm going to write the setup. So we're going to keep that first fraction the same. And then we're going to flip that second fraction. So I flip the bottom to the top and the top to the bottom. So now, technically, this could all be written out as one fraction being multiplied. So I want you to go through, cancel everything out, make sure you put your excluded values, then go ahead and try number 10 on your own. Show me your completed note sheet, and I will get you the homework. Thanks for listening.